Now these are all industry standard industry terms. Now Web3 it all started with the blockchain, but then when you look at Web3 is a next level of evolution in which there are several other technologies they can also come into this at a wider scale. But the basic problem that it is solving, that you should be the prime beneficiary of the content you are creating. That should be in your hand, right? Now that's where the token comes. We'll have detailed session on all these topics. I'm just trying to give you a precursor before we formally start today. Uh, Now this Web3 became a game changer. The decisions could be taken by people, as a group. You could go and create your own currency. Now how exciting it is, and we will talk about it today. In fact, when we start, technology has to serve a purpose. Now if technology is only for technology, then it really fades away very soon. It needs to have, it needs to have an ability to impact the lives of the people. It needs to have an ability to go and impact the social mechanism, the social behavior. Right? Technology is made by people. Technology has to serve the people, and that's where all this technology, and we'll try to discuss all these aspects in which how exactly it is impacting the way we behave, and what has been the social norm for last maybe thousands of years, basically, right? So now if you look at healthcare industry, there are several problems that we are right now facing in this industry. There is a big compliance requirement which is called HIPAA compliance requirement, where the data, health data, has to be kept confidential. You cannot just go and share data from here to there, right? My health data has to be kept secret. You cannot trust these third parties or intermediaries for what they say, that they have your data confidential. Doesn't matter. One hack and all the data goes public. People start selling these data on platforms. So the one is that keeping the patient data, keeping the health records intact, so that nobody could go and make modifications in those. Very important. The way hospitals, the way clinics, they interact with the government entities, for example, the way they all interact with each other, the way the data is stored by all of these individuals, they all could come under the scope of this. Pharmaceutical industry, for example, a lot of manipulation happens. You never know what drug you are buying. Is it a counterfeit drug or is it a genuine drug? How do you go and make sure that what you are buying is genuinely an antibiotic? How do you know that? You don't know. So you could use blockchain to kind of go and ensure that from the point it is being created or manufactured till the point it reaches the end user, it completely could be traceable. Complete traceability, and traceability is one of the most important use cases of blockchain. We could use that. So like that, you can see the point I was talking about yesterday, that we should not try to use blockchain for the sake of using it. We should use blockchain. There are very, very relevant, so applications are many. Healthcare is one of the most critical areas. Clinical research. How many of you have heard of the process clinical research? Anybody? Can you explain that? What do you mean by clinical research? So clinical research is a process in which a drug gets discovered. There is a lot of trial that happens. Okay, the companies, they create some molecules, and then those molecules are given to some trial patients. And how are they responding to those that medicine that gets captured? And that's a very big process of 8 years or 10 years, sometimes even more. So what really happens that all these clinical trials data, they need to be kept confidential. You cannot just go and use it just like that. So Blockchain has got a tremendous applicability in the clinical trials process. Comes under healthcare, absolutely. So the examples are many, but the fundamental rules are very similar. Do you want to keep your data immutable? Nobody should be able to come and, you know, do chhedchhad with that. You cannot just go and allow anybody to come and, it's a central database. Imagine if the person who is, of course there are checkpoints for that also, but in general, if the admin of a database of a big and important, big and important system can do anything. Now there are processes made in place in which those guys have to go and get permissions. Maybe 2-3 people have to come and work together, you know, and then they kind of go and manipulate the data. But these are all man-made expected behaviors. But if you go and look at things in reality, it doesn't happen. All those cases are there. So there are several examples in which blockchain could be a perfect fit. Diamond, very, very expensive thing. And when the diamond gets extracted from the mine, from there when it reaches the end customer who buys it and who wears it or uses it for whatever purpose, it has to have several stages. And it is quite possible, and it happens, that if you do not have, you know, the right checks and balances in between, then somebody comes and manipulates it. It is very difficult to go and identify unless you are an expert, person in that area. You cannot go and look at the diamond and say it is, pure. I cannot do that. I mean, most of us cannot do that. So there has to be a provenance. There has to be a traceability. Yeah.
So I would like to ask you about the energy consumption of these blockchains. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Especially the Bitcoin blockchain. So there's a data point which I read that it consumes around 3 to 30 terawatt hours per year, which is 0.5% of global energy consumption. So does it generate enough value for the people so as to justify that energy consumption? So yeah, that.
What is the name?
Nayan, sir.
Nayan, yeah, Nayan, thanks. Please sit down. Now, very interesting point you raised, and that has been one of the concerns of blockchain, especially when it started with Bitcoin. And we will cover many of those things when we have the detailed sessions. But the basic point here is that why do we need so much of energy, right? We need so much of energy because you are dealing with an uncontrolled, public system. And I was talking to one professor from Delhi yesterday, IIT Delhi yesterday, and we talked about consensus mechanism. Now, if you are a centralized database, getting consensus is one person's job or one entity's job, basically. But the moment you talk about a public database, public blockchain, then it becomes difficult because there are people who are going to be misbehaving. So how do you set a system in which everybody behaves in a certain way, and that's where this energy consumption comes. Now, that was the first thing that had got invented, right? Now, we will talk about the usage of Bitcoin a little later, but right now I am answering to your question that proof of work is a mechanism which has been a foolproof mechanism, but very costly mechanism of arriving at a consensus, right? But then, of course, most of the blockchains right now, they are working on proof of stake, right? So people have realized this, that this cannot go on for long. Now, whether Bitcoin will change this, that's a question that we have to see. Okay, what value does it create? And again, many of those things we'll talk about it right now. Why do you need a cryptocurrency for that matter? Why do you need a currency for that matter? Forget about cryptocurrency. We'll talk about that. So all these things are debatable thing, but one thing is for sure, that we have realized that the proof of work cannot be the long-term sustainable solution of arriving at consensus, 100%. That's where Ethereum started with proof of work. They moved on to proof of stake. They didn't have a choice. Ethereum being the, I would say the most prominent, blockchain ecosystem right now, they had to come to proof of stake. Otherwise, it is not sustainable.